Hi, I'm Katie Carlone, and I have a little riddle for you. So, what is the shortest distance between two people? Well, there's lots of answers, but my favorite one is the shortest distance between two people is a story. I love stories because they connect me to people I don't know, people from around the world, and yet connects me with their experience, and I can share that experience with them. And I love to share God's love with other people through stories. I'm not one to go up and just say, God loves you, but I can share a story. So I hope you'll allow me to share this story with you. This is a story that happened to me last summer. So we had invited some people over for dinner, and I was very proud of myself because it was 90 minutes before they were going to come, and I looked around the apartment and everything was in tip-top shape. I had the food ready to go. Everything was clean. I was very excited. But then I realized, oh my gosh, we don't have any flowers. Well, I love to have flowers in the house just to make it beautiful. And so I quickly looked at the situation and said, I've got just enough time to jump in my car and go to Star Market and pick up some flowers and come back. So I did. I jumped in my car and drove to Star Market and parked the car. And just as I was entering the store, I first heard this older woman complaining really, really loudly, and she was yelling at this other person, and I looked over, and it made me so uncomfortable because this older, frail woman was being kind of mean to this younger woman. She wasn't that young. She was like in her 60s maybe, and the younger woman seemed to be like maybe her caregiver, or maybe it was her daughter. I didn't know. But the daughter or the caregiver was being so patient and so kind, but this older woman was just being so mean, and it just hit me in the gut. I just didn't want to be around it. So I just said, okay, that's fine. That's happening over there. And I quick ran to the flowers and immersed myself in that and found a lovely 2 bunches, one for the living room and one for the dining room. That's what I always do. In fact, just you can see in my dining room right here. So anyway, I got the flowers and dashed over to the only line that was open, and that was supposed to be the express line, but it was stopped. And don't you know, I couldn't believe it. This woman and her caregiver were just in front of me, and the lady, the older woman, was still complaining really loudly. She was accusing this younger woman of stealing her money and stealing her food, and she was just, her tone was really, really harsh. And so now I thought to myself, interesting, I wasn't upset this time around. I kind of just looked at the situation and realized that this older woman obviously had dementia of some kind, and she wasn't in control of this, and that the younger woman was just doing her very, very best in a difficult, challenging situation. So I just patiently kind of waited, and the woman is very slowly, she's got every nickel and dime on the counter, and she's counting it out, still accusing the woman next to her. And I thought to myself, wow, this is tough, and I hope I can get back to my dinner in enough time. And as I'm thinking this, a thought pops into my head, and it's actually a voice. And this voice says, very kindly, very compassionately, with so much gentleness, it says, give her the flowers. I can't even say exactly how it was related because it was just, I can't replicate it. It was just so kind and gentle, though. Give her the flowers. So I'm going, what? You know, you hear about this happening to other people, but it hadn't happened to me before. So I just kind of ignored it. And as I'm waiting, I hear it again. It's like, give her the flowers. And I knew right away, I knew the first time, it wasn't give the flowers to the older woman. It was give the flowers to the woman who was trying so hard to be kind and gentle herself in this very difficult situation, which was escalating more and more and getting louder and louder. And so I thought, well, I can't. It's too embarrassing. I call attention to myself. I don't know how to do that. What would I say? So I start to argue with this voice, right? And so then I just said, no, I must be making this up. So I just stood there again. And while the scene plays out in front of me, and sure enough, the voice very calmly, very gently, give her the flowers. So I'm like, well, all right. I get really exasperated. I said, I'll give her one bunch of flowers, but I'm going to keep the other bunch for my guests. And you're going to have to show me how to do this because I just don't even know what to say. I don't know what to do. So, and it was kind of like, it's just strange. But yet I knew this was the real deal. This really felt too kind and gentle and calming and so non-judgmental. So I just said, all right, I'm just going to have to see what I can do. So by now it's my turn. They've gone on ahead, this couple, and I thought, oh good, maybe they're in their car and they're on their way home and I don't have to deal with this at all. But so I pay for my flowers and go out, and don't you know, right outside the store is the couple, and the older lady is still complaining, still accusatory, and I couldn't believe it. So I thought, well, it's now or never. So I'm going, okay, Lord, because I knew this was our good God in heaven, in my heart now, helping me. So I said, all right, Lord, here we go. So I walked up to the woman, and she had had such panic in her eyes, such heartache, you could tell, I could feel it in my gut and I could see it in her eyes, that she was desperate, and she was really just trying with all of her might to hang on, to just hang on. And I could see that now. I could really see that, and I could feel it. And I felt so much tenderness toward her. But I walked right up to her and I just said, here, these are for you. And I handed her the bunch of flowers. And it's kind of like I jammed her system. She kind of looked at me like, well, what? Like, who are you? And she looked at me and she said, really? Are these for me? And I actually laughed at that point. I said, oh, yes, I know for sure these are for you. I know for sure. So, and I said, and I just want you to know how wonderful you are and how much you are loved. Thank you. And so I handed her the flowers. And then she just gave me this look like I'll never forget it. She just looked into my eyes, searched my face, and she said, you have no idea how much this means to me right now, in this moment, how much this means to me. I still get choked up. So I said, thank you. I said, no, thank you. These truly are for you. And then I turned around and walked to my car, tossed the other flowers on the seat, in the passenger seat next to me, grabbed the steering wheel, and I just cried and cried and cried. And I cried because so much had just happened in that moment, So I said, I just couldn't believe it myself. I was so overwhelmed with love that would not let me go, love that held on to my resistance, that didn't judge me, that used me even in that moment, love that recognized this woman who so in that moment needed love, loved the older woman who was just doing the best she could, and so it all just overwhelmed me in the most wonderful way. Just in that moment, I felt awash in love. So then I kind of pulled myself together, dried my eyes, and drove home just in time to have a lovely, wonderful dinner with our friends. I don't even know if I shared the story with them because I was so overtaken, but I wrote it in my journal that night, and I share that story because if ever there was a story about God's grace in action, it was that day. So now I'm braver because of that, and I love how God uses me even in my resistance. I love how God takes care of each and every one of them. So I just have a thought and a question for you. I think stories are like love, and they really want to be shared. So do you have a story? And what would that story be? And maybe you want to go and write it down so you can remember the details. And I just encourage you that if you do, just ask God, just give God the story, and believe me, God will arrange an opportunity for you to share that story. So thank you. That is the story I love sharing with you today. Take care.